if you understand subject and verb agreement properly, almost 75 to 80% of errors in your English speaking or English writing will vanish. Whatever lines that are given, you need to specify the name of the poem and the poet of that poem, and also the literary devices that are used over there. So that is nothing but annotation. Poetry doesn't have a grammatical structure, whereas prose has a grammatical structure. It has sentences, it has paragraphs, as I told before. Hello everyone, I am Dr. Shalini, Professor of English, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. Today we are here to understand the syllabus prescribed by University of MYSURU for first sem B.Ca. Let us see what is there in today's session. We'll be understanding in this module, we'll be understanding about the syllabus, the pattern of evaluation and the pattern of question paper, what is a prose and what is poetry, and also we'll be understanding few literary genres. This is just an introduction to you. So let us begin with the syllabus. So we have two parts here, that is poetry and prose. Apart from that, we have language component also. So when we come to poetry, we have these poems which are very famous and very interesting for you to read and understand. So the first one we have is When in Disgrace, which is a sonnet written by William Shakespeare. Next we have Fidelity, written by William Wordsworth. This is a wonderful poem. We have been learning this probably from a very young age. Okay, so maybe 4 or 5 years you might have learned this poem if you remember so. So next we have the poem by W.H. Auden, that is Refugee Blues. This is also a very interesting poem that is written about the refugees. Next we have James Patrick Kinney's poem, The Cold Within. So this is also a very interesting poem which gives an insight to yourself. Next we have Freedom, written by Rabindranath Tagore. Then we have Thomas R. Hardy's poem, The Man He Killed. So who killed whom, we are going to understand in this poem. Next we have Alexander Pope's poem, The Quiet Life. He is a very famous novelist and a poet. So that we are going to understand. Then we have George Herbert's The Pulley. So these are the 8 poems that you are going to learn in this year. Then when it comes to prose, we have few essays and stories. So we have George Orwell's What is Science? That is an essay written by George Orwell. Then we have Stephen Leacock's With the Photographer. This is a kind of travelogue, so that you are going to understand. Then we have Isaac Singer's Fool's Paradise. This is a wonderful story to understand. At last, we have Prospects of Democracy in India, which is an essay written by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So these are the 4 things you're going to understand in prose. So apart from this, we have language component also. So what is there in language component? We are going to understand punctuation. Yes, this is the very basic level grammar you are going to learn in this semester. So we have punctuation, then we have articles, articles as in a, an and the. So these are the articles you are going to understand, that is definite and indefinite articles. Then we have prepositions. So this is also an introduction to grammar to you. So prepositions you are going to understand, which is one of the parts of speech without which it is very difficult for you to frame a proper sentence. So prepositions will be understanding, and the major part of grammar, that is subject and verb agreement, that is subject verb concord. It is also called as subject verb concord. You can also call it as subject verb agreement. So what should be the verb based on what the subject is? So the verb depends on the tense, the person of the subject, and also the number of the subject. So how is verb related to this subject, you are going to understand. So if you understand subject and verb agreement properly, almost 75 to 80% of errors in your English speaking or English writing will vanish. So we are going to understand that in this semester. So these are the 4 portions you are going to understand in language component and literary activity. So that was the syllabus. Then how do we, now we will understand the pattern of evaluation. So how will be your evaluation pattern? So we have formative assessment, wherein you will have the first internal test, that is for 10 marks. The second internal test will also be for 10 marks. So apart from this, we have a class test or assignment or something like that. We'll be giving you some survey, some interview, some class presentation or anything like this. Okay, so that will be in 2 parts, and that also will be there for 10 marks. Okay, so all these will constitute to 40 marks, that is the internal marks only. Okay, so that is in our hands, that is given by the college. So you can write internals, you can present some surveys or interviews, whatever is given by the teacher, and you can get this, you can earn 40 marks over here. So this was the internal part. Okay, coming to the question paper pattern. How will your question paper look like? So this is the pattern in which your question paper is set. You will have objective type questions. First thing is, you will have objective type questions wherein you will have to answer any 8 questions out of 15 questions. This will be for 1 mark each, and this will be for 8 marks. Then we have reference to context. This is also called as annotation. Okay, reference to context is also called as annotation, wherein you will have some lines from the poem. You will have few lines from the poem, and you will have to write the summary. You will have to annotate those lines that are given. So what is annotation? I'll be telling it to you in the class. At the very basic level, I can tell you that you have to write who said this to whom, or maybe from which poem it is chosen, and what is the literary device that is used, and what does the poet say in those 4 lines. What is the summary of those 4 lines or those 2 lines that are given. So whatever lines that are given, you need to specify the name of the poem and the poet of that poem, and also the literary devices that are used over there. So that is nothing but annotation. So out of 6 questions, you need to answer any 3 questions over there. You have 8 poems, you will be getting 1 question from each poem, and you will have to answer any 3. Okay, so you don't know which poems will be chosen. Out of 6 poems, like out of 8 poems, any 6 poems can be chosen for you to annotate. So any 3 will be given. So you'll have to answer any 3, and each one will be for 4 marks. So this altogether constitutes to 12 marks. Then we come to the essay type questions in prose. So you'll get any 4 questions in prose. There are only 4 prose parts that are given. So each question, you can expect 1 question from each prose. So you need to answer any 2. So prepare thoroughly for any 2 prose parts. That is enough for you. So out of 4, you need to answer any 2. That means you need to prepare thoroughly for any 2 prose parts. So you'll have to answer any 2. Then each one is for 5 marks. This constitutes for 10 marks. Okay, next we move on to few essay type questions that are from poetry. So this also will be for 5 marks, wherein out of 4 you need to answer any 2. So out of 4 poems, you need to prepare for any 2 poems very thoroughly. But here you would have already prepared for 6 poems. So altogether you prepare for any 6 poems, that is enough for you. So out of 4, you will answer any 2, and each question will be for 5 marks. So you need to answer any 2, and that constitutes for 10 marks. Okay, so here we have 10, 20, and 20 plus 20 is 40. So here it becomes 40 marks. Fine. Next, what is left? The language component part is left. So what do we have here? We have punctuation, articles, prepositions, as well as subject and verb agreement. So each question will be for 1 mark, and each main will be for 5 marks. There is no choice over here. Okay, so you cannot answer, you don't have choice at all. You need to answer all of those. Either it will be fill in the blanks, or you need to correct the sentences, or you need to choose among the options given. It is not MCQ, but options will be given in brackets, and you have to choose that and fill in the blanks. Okay, so more or less it will be the fill in the blanks only. So this will constitute for 20 marks. So term and exam, that is your question paper, will be for 60 marks altogether. Okay, so this is 60 and internals is 40, and you will be having it for 100 marks. So your marks will appear for 100 marks. So then we need to understand few things. This is just an introduction, I said. So I'm introducing to you what is prose. So prose is actually any written piece of literature. So it is actually built on some sentences, paragraphs, so all these are included in prose. So rather than lines and verses, they come in poetry. But prose, you have complete sentences and you have paragraphs. Whereas in poem, you have stanzas. Here you have paragraphs. And you have some examples, like you will have some examples in the prose or kinds of prose, whatever it is, they are actually novels, short stories, essays, letters, editorials, articles, journals, all these come under prose only. Okay, so this actually, the prose part actually follows natural pattern of speech and communication. It can be like as I'm talking to you, or it can be like I'm writing few sentences just to narrate the meaning, just to communicate the meaning. So it is just full of simple, compound and complex sentences. It can be sometimes, it can also include direct and indirect speech also. So this is basically how we communicate, the same way we write it also. So that constitutes of this prose part. Okay, so this has a grammatical structure. Okay, poetry doesn't have a grammatical structure, whereas prose has a grammatical structure. It has sentences, it has paragraphs, as I told before. It can also be something like everyday language. How I'm talking to you every day, that can also be possible. If not, if I'm writing something very formally, that also is possible. So there are chances that we use everyday language also to narrate some stories. Then we have sentences and thoughts that continue across the lines. So there are many sentences, there are many thoughts, that continuation between the lines. So this was introduction to prose. Now we'll understand what is poetry. So poetry is some way of expressing our thoughts wherein the emotions and events are highly compressed. We do not use sentences, complete sentences to convey our thoughts, but we cut it short into few verses, few lines, few short sentences which may not be complete, may be complete, may not be complete. Okay, so we express our thoughts and each and every word counts. So each and every word speaks, you can say. Okay, so each and every word has some meaning in it. Each and every word counts over there, because we consider something called as meter in poetry. So when we come to the physical classes, I'll tell you what is meter, what is rhyming words, everything we'll be understanding. This poetry also tends to be the most beautiful form of literature, because you can also sing this, you can also tune, and you can also adapt some tunes and you can sing. So that is the reason this is actually considered as the most beautiful form of literature. Whatever you write in poetry, each and every word, everything has to be chosen with utmost care. So this is called as poetry. So now you know the difference between a prose and a poetry. We have few literary genres that we have to understand. So what are those literary genres? There are 4 important literary genres that we are going to learn in this semester. That is poetry. We have a set of poems for you to understand. Then we have fiction. Fiction is an imaginary writing. Okay, imaginary literature, like you imagine something and you have to write a story. This may not be real or may be real. Maybe if it is real, there are few things which you modify. Okay, according to the situation, you modify few things, and that is called as a fiction. So basically fiction is something which is imaginary. Okay, an imaginary writing is called as a fiction. Non-fiction is just the opposite of it. Something may be related to science, or something, it may be related to some historical events or any event that is there in your daily life. So that is called as the non-fiction. Then you have drama. The written form of a play, that is the enactment on the stage, is called as a drama. This will have acts, scenes, dialogues, characters. It will have a stage setting. Setting means where the incident takes place, where the situation takes place. And we also have props that can be used on stage. Props, nothing but properties that can be used on stage. So these are the 4 important genres that you are going to learn this year, not semester. This year you are going to learn these 4 genres. So that was the introduction to the syllabus. Hope you could understand all these. So in each lesson, you need to concentrate all of these. So which are those? You need to concentrate on the author, who has written this. If it is a poet, you can concentrate on the poet. You need to know little about the poet. You need to concentrate on the author if it is a person who has written the story or a novel. Then you also must concentrate on the title. So title sometimes gives you the clue what the story is all about. What is the plot all about? So concentrate on the title. Then we will understand the plot also. Plot is the overall summary of the lesson or of the poem in one line. Okay, so the plot is something like you compress the whole theme of the story to one single line. Then we have the significance. Why is that story important? Why is that poem very important? What is the significance of that piece of literature in today's world is what we will understand. Then we also concentrate on the characters. We will come across characters in each and every poem as well as lesson. Sometimes in poem it can be inanimate, means it may not have life, but it is considered as a character wherein the poet uses the literary device personification. Okay, so using few literary devices, the inanimate things, lifeless objects will be made into animate objects, that is lively objects. So we need to concentrate on the characters. Apart from this, with exam point of view, we are going to understand the summary. Then we will understand the question and answers which you will be getting in the PDF form. Then we will be understanding the conclusion. Summary and conclusion go hand in hand. Okay, as soon as summary is over, we will be understanding the conclusion also. Conclusion is a part of summary. Okay, so these two can be considered as very important with exam point of view. So this was the introduction to the syllabus. Hope you are clear with the syllabus. The next session we will be starting with our first poem, that is When in Disgrace. So let us meet again. Thank you for your time. So let us meet again very shortly. Take care. Bye-bye.